Hello, dear friends, it's me with you, Sofya Dorinskaya. I'm a psychiatrist and the head of the Center for Medical Information. Today, our conversation will once again be about nutrition, since the flow of questions about why a person still can't follow a vegetarian diet or food combining continues unabated. As far as I understand, this is already some kind of refusal to eat. And why does a person still need to definitely eat animal protein in sufficient quantities? One of the primary arguments frequently made by individuals who have recently transitioned to following vegetarianism, and then subsequently felt that their physical health was beginning to decline. Perhaps they feel significantly worse overall, or they received specific medical advice and diagnostic results from healthcare professionals indicating that they urgently need to consume more animal protein, is that they eventually make the difficult decision to reintroduce meat back into their daily diets for the sake of their well-being. These people start to feel increasingly sluggish, apathetic, and lacking in energy. They constantly want to lie down and sleep, and when they eventually go to consult with their respected teachers, so to speak, or perhaps turn to their supportive vegetarian community for guidance, the specific explanation they are being given regarding what is happening to them is that they are being poisoned by the consumption of meat products, they are undergoing a state of physiological intoxication, and this is frequently utilized as a primary persuasive argument for people to completely give up eating meat and return to a lifestyle of strict vegetarianism. You see, my dear friends and colleagues, in order for a person to live a long and fulfilling life, to maintain vibrant health, to find true happiness, to be highly effective, and to successfully accomplish all of their most important goals, a person must master one essential and fundamental ability. They must have the ability to evaluate information. So let me take a moment to explain to you exactly what this fascinating phenomenon is, which occurs when a person, after being a strict vegan or even a breatharian for some time, or perhaps after undergoing a long period of fasting, they start returning to a normal healthy diet, begin consuming animal protein, and they feel this overwhelming apathy, laziness, a desire to just lie down, to sleep all day, and they don't want to do anything. In order to properly assess this information, I want to go back to the school biology course and remind you about the so-called pyramid of the animal kingdom. In general, the pyramid, well, not just kind of, but actually a pyramid, yes, of the animal and plant world that exists on planet Earth. Initially, we have the earth, water, air, and light. How from these non-living phenomena, compounds, physical objects, how from these non-living manifestations of nature, life emerges, so to speak, how life grows out of them. There is a class, I won't go through every single step, but will cover the main ones. There is a remarkable class of living organisms that exists on our planet. They possess the unique ability to transform the earth, the water, the air, and the radiant light into vibrant, complex living manifestations of nature. These are plants. That is, for a plant to live, to grow its cells, it must grow and increase in physical size. In order to successfully reproduce, it absolutely requires various non-living components: earth, water, air, and light. The next biological living entities on the evolutionary ladder are organisms that subsist entirely on consuming various plants. And these specific organisms, by systematically consuming and digesting those plants, slowly transform and convert plant-based food into animal-based food, and eventually into complex animal proteins and essential nutrients. These are all herbivores, and some birds as well. Well, for example, let's go through this very briefly. Take the cow, for instance. An interesting young woman, as I understand it, who just recently finished school and took the Unified State exam, wrote to me. She wrote that I am absolutely wrong that people need to eat meat. And as an example, she mentioned the cow. She explained that the human body is no different from the cow's body. A cow's teeth are designed for chewing grass. They are flat, and humans have similar molars. And based on this, the young woman concluded that I am wrong. Let's pause for a moment and talk about the cow. A cow belongs to the so-called ruminant animals. And cows don't have canines. If we're talking about the structure of the jaw and teeth, humans actually do have canines. But what happens next? Not only does a cow have this kind of jaw structure, but its stomach consists of two chambers, and the cow's stomach is also, well, kind of folded. And why is a cow considered a ruminant animal? Because all day long a cow eats grass, and at night when she goes to the stall, she regurgitates this grass and chews it again. The entire life of a cow, from birth to death, is devoted to chewing grass, digesting it, and doing so in such a complex way. This is how plant-based food is processed, specifically in this class of organisms. It is converted into animal protein. And then there are various types of living organisms, specifically predators or omnivores, that require meat. These predators and omnivores are creatures who absolutely need essential nutrients found in animal protein in order to survive and live healthy lives. I once read a very interesting story about a strictly vegan woman who decided to adopt a small young kitten. And so much so, forgive me for being blunt, she became so obsessed with her veganism that she started feeding the kitten only plant-based food. And the kitten died. You cannot, by your own decision, entirely on your own, make this specific choice without any outside help. Misunderstanding or false understanding change this. This is the biological structure of the world. You cannot, by your own decision, change the type of organism by stopping feeding an organism that, in order to live, must receive animal protein, whether it's a predator or an omnivore. Monkeys, by the way, are classified as omnivorous animals. They, don't just chew on grass and eat bananas. They can kill and eat small animals, and they do so. So you can't just, based on your own idea, your own foolishness, or some notion you've adopted without any real evaluation, change the type of organism. According to classification, the human organism is considered omnivorous. And the entire gastrointestinal tract, all the biochemical processes of the human body are designed in such a way that it must receive a sufficient amount of animal protein. Now let's return to the question of what it means when a person used to eat only greens and then suddenly started eating meat again and began to experience apathy, drowsiness, lack of motivation, low energy in their body, and so on. Let's recall a few classes of the nervous system, more precisely two classes of the nervous system that control the human body, the body of a predator and the body of a predator. These are the sympathetic nervous system, or the adrenal system, and the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system, I have already talked about this in my videos. Let's repeat it once more, but now in this context. The sympathetic nervous system. It controls the body in emergency situations. Adrenaline is released. And this system operates under conditions of danger, and above all, in conditions of hunger. Because when you feel good, you don't feel like doing anything? You're in a great mood. You won't go out to get yourself food. Everything is already wonderful for you. An animal organism can only start hunting and getting food for itself when the body's cells signal that they are hungry, adrenaline is released, and this is when that very happy phase begins, the very phase that those who eat only plants or live on prana emphasize. When you have just had a healthy body, you are eating normally, and you start living in a state of hunger, of course. Adrenaline starts to be released, your eyes shine, your reactions improve, you can get a ton of things done in a day, but in reality, it's the sympathoadrenal system at work. And if you weren't a human being who can sit and think about all sorts of nonsense about what this means, but just an animal, you would simply go find, I don't know, an antelope, take it down, prepare it and eat it. But a human doesn't hunt animal organisms, especially when they consciously decide to refuse food. And so the human's sympathoadrenal system starts to work and adrenaline is released. If a person continues to behave in this manner, if their entire physical being is fundamentally wired to go out, search for sustenance, and consume food. However, if an individual chooses not to follow this path, acting instead according to their own logical reasoning, then, after a certain period of time has passed, their heightened state of nervous excitability, or if you prefer, that unmistakable sparkle in their eyes and their significantly increased levels of productivity, will begin to gradually and inevitably fade away into nothingness. And some people write to me saying they've been vegans for 5 years already, or they've been vegans for 7 to 10 years. And in reality, nothing of the sort happens. They are not aggressive. On the contrary, they've calmed down. They've become more resilient mentally. But what does this mean? It means that the sympathetic nervous system cannot function forever. The sympathetic nervous system has its own limits of operation. Below and above the sympathetic system, the parasympathetic system operates. The parasympathetic system functions both in near-death states and in states of health. So when you write to me saying that for 5, 7, or 10 years you've been eating only greens, and now that's it, you don't lash out at anyone, you don't argue with anyone, you're calm, you handle various situations perfectly well. Here's what I want to tell you. You haven't risen to health and sound mind. You're already slipping into a near-death state. Because forgive me, your body no longer has the strength for emotions, for energy, or even to argue with someone. You're simply little by little descending toward death. So what happens to a person who ate only greens? Well, that person is also in a state of sympathoadrenal regulation, and then he starts eating meat. If not too much time has passed, let's say, I don't know, a few months, but let's be generous and say 2 weeks the person was eating only greens. And so he realizes that common sense has finally prevailed. He remembers his high school biology course, and he understands that he's heading in the wrong direction. This person starts eating meat again. There is a threshold between the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic. This is when you start to feel satiated, content with life, at peace. The good state exists. This is that threshold, that boundary. And this boundary is characterized by laziness, the desire to sleep, to do nothing, a kind of psychological satisfaction. You see, you don't want to argue with anyone. Everything is good for you. Because back when you were incredibly hungry, or perhaps a wild animal, a fierce predator, when it finally put every single bit of its strength into catching and eating something, then and only then comes that deep, overwhelming feeling of complete satiety. And this is the period when the sympathetic nervous system shuts off and switches to the parasympathetic. But this happens as life moves forward. This very switch happens precisely through all-consuming laziness, because during this period, the body has spent too much of what? It has spent hormones. It has burned through its vitamins. It may have even broken down some of its own internal proteins in order to do everything possible to feed the body. And the body, needs time to recover. It needs time. And I want to tell you that if you were into plant-based eating and then you came to your senses and started consuming animal proteins, and you experienced this laziness, apathy, lack of motivation, unwillingness to do anything, and absence of energy, you are actually very lucky. This is significant because it implies that you are still within a zone where a full restoration of your health is entirely possible, basically without suffering from any significant long-term losses. But if you are already in this zone and start eating meat, you will go through some very strong discomfort. You will start to experience pain. Because in a pre-mortal state, when the sympathetic nervous system is already switching to, so to speak, pre-mortal parasympathetic mode, this pre-mortal parasympathetic state is characterized by natural anesthesia. A person, when moving toward death, already in this pre-mortal parasympathetic state, does not feel that they are ill with anything. This is a natural anesthesia, which, well, that's how nature intended it, you see. Because if there were pain here, if the body had the strength to experience pain, because, excuse me, to feel pain you also need nutrients, you need vitamins, you need proteins, you need the impulse to travel, but there's nothing left to carry it. And so this natural pre-mortal anesthesia sets in. So if you are already at this threshold and you start eating animal protein and begin in some way to come back, to move toward life rather than toward death, then, excuse me, all the ailments you developed through your vegan or pranic lifestyle, they start to manifest themselves. And suddenly it turns out that your joints are destroyed, and suddenly it turns out that your endocrine system is ruined, and suddenly it turns out that somewhere you have cancer or a precancerous condition. Do you understand? That's why cancer is often discovered in a person already at the final stage, and before that they didn't feel anything because this pre-mortal parasympathetic state was already at work. Do you understand? There was a natural anesthesia here. So this is your great fortune. If you practiced veganism, this plant-based diet, and then you started eating meat and you began to feel lazy, that is your great fortune. Because the moment that you start to experience physical discomfort or sharp pain, then your entire body naturally begins to react by show you the true picture of your health. It begins to reveal the true situation, what you have done to your body. Do you understand? And going back, if it's still possible, if the situation isn't yet critical, will be very difficult. It will be very difficult. So please, when you listen to someone about a topic, take a moment to carefully evaluate the information you are being told. It is vital to consider the context of everything you hear. Because the very fact that meat is rotting inside a person's body, well, that's just complete nonsense. You see, I understand that people are uneducated, people who didn't make an effort in school. Even those who did well in school biology sometimes have such strange ideas about how the body works, it's astonishing. So this is one of the made-up, ignorant ideas about what happens to a person when they eat meat. Remember, by classification, humans are omnivores. The human body is omnivorous. In order to live, a person is required to consume animal protein every day. They are obligated to do this. Why is it that even someone who consumes animal protein can still get sick? I have a video explaining why people who eat meat still get sick. For some reason, not everyone understood what that video was about. It's simple. If you have vitamin deficiencies, your food won't be absorbed. Because as I've said many times in my videos, if there were a single solution to life's problems, life on earth would be paradise. So we have a ton of problems, but only one solution. Everyone would learn that solution and everyone would go on to live perfectly. No, comrades, that's not how it works. There really are a lot of problems. So you need to know a solution for each problem. Then sometimes you need to know a solution for every part of that problem. You see, you need to have a lot of information and it needs to be reliable information. Let's take a look now. From a psychiatric point of view, let's see how the body itself signals to a person that they're doing something wrong. I mean, in relation to herbivores, paranoids, and so on. Our mind is set up in such a way that if we have an unresolved problem, we keep thinking about it. We keep thinking about it all the time. And now I personally know these people who are always eating this grass and they're constantly thinking about food. 24 hours a day. This person is thinking about food. They're thinking about what they can eat, what they can't eat, how to prepare what they are allowed to eat, where to avoid getting what they're not allowed to eat. When he really starts to lose his mind, he begins browsing culinary websites and starts insulting people who post recipes for things like cutlets, or pork knuckles or pies, or they're making some kind of liver dish. These people are driven to hatred for one simple reason. This person is constantly hungry. Because it's normal to think about food when it's actually time to think about it. It's normal to think about food when a person is hungry. And during that period, while he's thinking about what to cook and looking forward to enjoying the meal. But when a person has enjoyed their food, when they're full, thoughts about food disappear. And you start doing all the other things you need to do. You engage in meaningful creativity, you work hard, you spend quality time with your family, you go to the theater, you enjoy beautiful art, and you live your life to the fullest. That's why one of the criteria for whether you're behaving properly with regard to food is also this. Do you think about food all the time? Analyze your day. And if the majority of your time is spent thinking about what you should eat, what you can eat, what's allowed on your diet. No, you see, here's the thing. There are people who are less fortunate, who have had their stomach or part of their stomach removed, or who have had their gallbladder removed. But that's exactly what constitutes a disability for the body. That's the problem when a person is missing an organ. And the problem is that a person is forced to spend part of their time thinking, well, that's it, the organ is gone, and now I have to figure something out. But when you have all your organs, let's say, in relatively healthy condition, to voluntarily devote your life to a single topic, namely what you should eat, well, honestly, that's a certain kind of disability of the mind. So please take a moment to reflect on this. If you spend most of your time on these, even though all your organs are healthy, nothing has been removed, and you don't have a medically prescribed diet with strict restrictions, then if you're constantly thinking about food, you're doing something wrong. Because a person should think about food when they're hungry, prepare it, eat until they're satisfied, and that's it. Rest for 15 to 20 minutes, as you should after eating your fill. You shouldn't jump up and go somewhere right after a meal. You need to rest a little. I don't know, maybe enjoy the beautiful surroundings while sipping a cup of tea or coffee after a hearty lunch. And that's it, that's all. Then you go on and take care of your own business. Is someone calling me? Someone asked me in the video, please tell me, what is the correct weight? I can tell you there are several criteria for what a body should be like. The body should be healthy. The body should be resilient. The body should not cause its owner a lot of trouble, and what the weight of that body is doesn't matter at all. If your body is healthy, resilient, and doesn't cause you any trouble, it really doesn't matter how much it weighs. And if you don't like what you see in the mirror, find a good tailor. They will adjust your figure so beautifully for you. You will be grateful to them, and at the same time you will be healthy, happy, achieving your goals, and your life will be filled with so many interesting and wonderful things. You will be able to accomplish so much without getting stuck on just one primitive area. What should you eat then? This was Sofya Dorinskaya with you. All the best. Goodbye.